Good morning, good morning. You already know who it is. Target individual CJBK, live from New York City, New York. It is now 5:06 a.m. I am on my first route of the day, and I'm gonna just go ahead and dive right on into it. The augmented society. The augmented society. Technology is so advanced these days. The things that you see in stores, the things that you see advertised on TV, none of it truly compares to what's being secretly used. Even the so-called inventions or discoveries that you see that they create to basically help people who, can't hear to be able to hear, people who are blind to be able to see. All those devices that you're seeing, we know if you're being targeted, you already know what type of technology they're using, And like all those who are saying it's not technology, it's spiritual. It's not spiritual, it's technology. It's both. It's both. You gotta acknowledge that. Okay, if you don't want to accept that there are such things as deities, dark energies, spiritual energies, fine. Don't accept that. I mean, you're only making it harder for yourself if you don't. If you have some type of related trauma to what a human did, to use religion to, probably manipulate you or something like that, then that means you're not necessarily aware of the history of, the influence that other dimensional beings have over the human mind and spirit. But it definitely is both. The intentions of people is derived based on the energy that works within them. It's the intentions. What is something that truly motivates a person to kill without cause? Do you think they just basically just felt like killing? Is it something where maybe they experienced some type of trauma in their past, they never got over it, maybe they experienced some type of maybe they experienced powerlessness. Someone used them in some way, shape, or form. Who's that? Let me see if I can catch up to who that is. Maybe someone was used at some point, and they had to experience what it feels like to be powerless. So now that they're an adult, they want to experience that same feeling of rendering someone else powerless. It's an addicting feeling, but this is why we have spiritual guidance and discernment that, and spiritual rules that tell us to not be overcame, or overcome by evil intentions. It's the intentions, it's the spiritual intentions behind a person's actions that define what's truly happening. Why would someone want to actually possess another person's body or spiritual energy or control their willpower? if you don't fully understand, or you don't have no type of understanding or belief that our physical world is literally smack dab in the middle between other dimensions. Our physical world is smack dab in the middle between energy dimensions, where we're not just talking about angels and demons. We're talking about actual beings who are living in their just pure energy bodies. See, we have two bodies, whether you want to believe it or not. Our flesh cannot operate without energy, right? Which also implies that we have a spiritual body that is made of pure energy. Why do you think the talk or mentioning of reincarnation is so historic throughout all of humanity? It's been around for so long. Why do you think that is? This technology, though it can be used for many good things in the world, it can be used for many good things, but yet it's the intentions behind the user that's what makes it so terrible. You know, like, you know, think about your over-the-counter medicines, right? Things that's supposed to, you know, if used properly, it can heal a person, right? But if you're someone who basically, let's just say you're hurting in more psychological or emotional ways, you're going to take this medicine and overuse it, so then you can get some type of quote unquote benefit from it that's not what it was made for. It's the same thing with the technology that's being, created to help people who have, ALS, or people who are mute, or, people who struggle with communicating verbally. Now they're basically advertising, or they're basically publicizing. Who are they telling to get out the street? Oh, damn, she really is like in the street. Uh-oh. She's like, fuck you. She said, don't play with me tonight. Anyway, I love New York. I love New York and hate New York at the same time. But I don't even think it's necessarily that I hate New York. It's just the energy it's the energies. It's the energies. It's the mix of energies. And like sometimes I feel like New York could be cool, but it's so much dark energy. But that's because that's just how the elites made this city. I mean, technically any big metropolis, any, large city that has like, a substantial amount of wealth and disparity. I mean, this is how the program of targeting exists in general, because people have been basically oppressed for so long and ostracized for so long that their mind is now manipulated into, basically like a savagery, right? And then if you deprive a person for so long and you keep them subdued for so long, all it takes is at some point someone who have amassed a great deal of wealth, but now they want to be able to, let's say, manipulate those who are already oppressed. Why? Because they're desperate. They're desperate. They're in quote unquote need. So now it's just kind of like, I see you've been struggling for so long. I have something that can help you, but you have to do some things for me. It may seem wrong, but you can make a good deal of money and get out of your situation. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the principalities. You know, we're dealing with principalities. Like, I'm coming into the realization we're not really dealing with wrestling of the flesh and blood. I mean, if you watch my last two videos, you know, titled, you know, Principalities Part 1 and 2, you realize we're not necessarily wrestling with ourselves, but we're wrestling with the influence that is trying to have a greater influence over us than our mind and ourselves and our spiritual energy. We're dealing with people who are using powerful but not undefeatable devices and energy that is basically manipulating the minds of many. I know a lot of good people that's mixed into this program. I know they're good people. Because at least before my targeting, I got, you know, I got impressions that they were decent people. But ever since my targeting now, a lot of people who I've known for years, they kind of pulled themselves back. Whether someone told them, oh, don't mess with him because he's a snitch. It's not even that I snitched on anyone. I do not appreciate no one telling me what I'm supposed to do with my life. I do not appreciate someone telling me that I can't do something because it doesn't serve. You good. I don't appreciate anyone telling me that I can't do something that benefits myself as long as it doesn't hurt someone else or I'm not taking anything from someone else. I don't appreciate that. And if someone thinks they're going to be arrogant and bold enough to think I'm just going to lay down, I'm not going to lay down, because we're talking about my free will here. This is my free will. This is my, you know, God-given power and right I'm talking about. Where am I? Oh, came down the wrong block. All right, I gotta go. Oh yeah, I gotta go 3 more blocks. You know, but we're talking about free will. The very thing that God gave us that basically keeps us from all being destroyed to begin with, because God gave us free will centuries ago. And now here comes a portion of humanity who is basically being manipulated by spirits that they probably don't even fully understand is having a greater influence over them, trying to tell us we no longer have free will. You don't let no one convince you that you don't have free will. Oh, shit. I did not see that one. You don't let no one convince you and tell you that you don't have free will. That is pure manipulation by those who seek to control and use people. You are not a slave. You are not a puppet. You are not someone's property. Now, governments will tell you that you're their property because you're a citizen of their country or because you have a social security number or whatever the case may be. If you're not really sure about what I'm talking about when it comes to social security, you can look that one up. About how when you're born and you're given a social security number, you're basically considered a property of the United States of America. Look that shit up. So Think about it like this. You are not an inanimate object that someone can control and force to do something that you can't control. You always have a choice. You always have control over what you do, say, and think. But you have to actively use your mind and do according to what you feel is right and what's wrong. That is your free will. God gave you the free will to do what you please, but it doesn't mean that there aren't ramifications for everything that you do and don't do. I'm gonna pause here so I can make my delivery. I'll be back. Yeah, so like I was saying, when we talk about like gang stalking and things like that, you gotta remember that all of this is connected to the New World Order, the World Economic Forum, the techno-pagans, the technocrats, the elitists, the global depopulation. It's all part of all of that, right? Think about it like this. What we are going through as targeted individuals is basically a genocide. It's basically a genocide against those who will actually have the true understanding and knowing that we are supposed to be humans of the natural order. Everything about us is supposed to be organic, right? That's because that's how we were born. We were born to be organic creatures. But if you look up Dr. Yuval, golly, I can't remember his name now. And I just looked at his name, Yuval Harari something. But I mean, if you type in Dr. Yuval, you'll basically see that he's an advisor. First and foremost, he's a very influential figure in the transhumanist society. And he's also an advisor to Charles, I think it's a Charles Klaus or Klaus something, I forgot. And he talks about in many interviews and what's the word I'm looking for? Conferences about the history of humanity trying to change or augment human beings to become something more than what we are naturally supposed to be. The idea of transforming human genetics is not new. You know, the perfect human being or the perfect slave. All of these things are not new. They're old concepts, just have been advancing over the years secretly. You know, we're dealing with principalities. We're dealing with darkness in high places. We're dealing with people who have fear of actually realizing their greed is entirely way too much. Their greed is actually sucking humanity dry. Their greed is actually sucking life out of the earth. Now, the earth in itself is going to defend itself. The earth is going to defend itself in ways that we're going to try everything in our power to see if we can basically prevent the earth from defending itself. But honestly, there's nothing that humans could ever truly do to stop the earth from defending itself. Everything that we try to do to so-called prevent the earth from defending itself using technology and seeing if we can change things and without actually changing ourselves, we're only making it worse. We're actually encouraging the earth to fight even harder. Now, I'm not saying us, being those of us who don't necessarily have the will to want to actually, bleed the earth dry of resources or anything like that. Normal people don't necessarily have any, like, we're not greedy. Normal people are not greedy. We just want to be able to live in peace, live in harmony, have everything that we need. The things that we want is luxuries. I mean, luxury, anything that we could actually want is mostly luxury. If you want to travel, you can travel. There are people who travel the world and have no money. They have no job. But yet they find ways to travel. They work with people. That's a human thing to do. You want something, you may have a skill, or you have two hands, you have the ability to walk, or maybe you have some type of intelligence to help somebody with something. Maybe you're multilingual. But at the same time, it's like, well, making sure I'm not missing my stop. There are so many things that people do to still be able to achieve or obtain the things that they want without having to take advantage of someone or manipulate someone against their will just in order for them to get it. The transhumanist society, the augmented society, these are people who have already accepted the genetic change of their DNA, their brain structures. These are people who have already decided they no longer want to just be a human being, but they gotta be something extra. They can't just be a human being anymore. They gotta be a superhuman. They don't want to read anymore. What they would rather do is basically download information into their mind. Let me see. Hold on one second. Gotta make sure. So yeah. So think about it like this. All these people, they are augmentating themselves because they have a fear that, well, one of the big things that they're talking about, especially Bill Gates and many other elitists just like him, they feel like there's too many people in the world, right? And not just too many people, but they feel like there's too many people in the world who are not advancing themselves, let's just say intellectually, right? But then also with the other sad thing about it all is that, they think about how they basically, every time there's like some new experimental drug or whatever, they always test it on, people that live in Africa or whatever. After basically most of these so-called powerful countries that we have today have basically raped Africa of its resources and things of that sort. Now that when many of them are living, very below the poverty line, and a lot of them are poor, they don't have food, This is after the fact that they basically stole everything from us. And then they'll turn around and say, oh, they're poor, hungry, they can't really do anything. So they're basically like a hindrance to everyone else in the world. So what are they going to do? If they can't augment you, they're going to experiment on you, and then they're basically going to use you up, spit you out, and then kill you afterwards. So then you can't talk about it. This is what they do to third world countries. Now, what they do to our country or our nations is they create situations, they create systems, and based on how compliant you are to the programming of whether you go to school or you put yourself into the rat race and you try to see if you can make a lot of money or make someone else a lot of money, whatever the case may be. Basically, if you can do something for someone else and amass a wealth or whatever, or you can basically prove that you are capable of controlling other people, then they kind of be like, this is a good one here. We need to keep him or her. This augmented society is basically a mass of people who literally are just like a bunch of fearful human beings who are afraid that we may actually find an equilibrium or a balance. Because whether people want to say it or not, there's a lot of people that still don't like the fact that people of color are in the same room as them. They're not going to say it out loud because they already know that if you say something like that out loud, then, well, you get quote unquote canceled, right? So what do? They give you this false sense of inclusion, and then they make you feel like you're a part of them, but then secretly they're basically just trying to use you. Not everybody, but there's definitely people out there that do not like the fact that a person of color is in the same room as them. It is what it is. They're not going to say it out loud. But if you're an empath, or you can understand and feel energy, you can literally feel the energy of a person who technically does not like that you are in their presence. You can feel that energy. It's the same as someone who is morally right, who is in the presence of someone who knows that's immoral, it's like if when someone who is immoral is in the presence of someone who they know is morally sound, that person who is immoral cannot stand the sight of a morally sound person. It burns them. It's like as if you were a garlic and they are a vampire. Even though I don't know how real that truly is, but that's basically what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who hate because they want to hoard resources for themselves. This augmented society, that's all it truly is. The augmented society is literally all about hoarding resources for themselves. They augment themselves to make themselves more smarter, better, and supposedly more healthier, but you can't make yourself healthier using synthetic materials, because we are organic beings. We are organic beings and we are spiritual beings. The more they try to synthetically improve themselves, the more they're going to have to depend on constantly upgrading themselves synthetically. it's basically like it's like drugs. Basically, it's literally like drugs. It's an addiction. You know. So just keep in mind that we are in a war against people who believe that they believe that they're better than other people. They believe that they deserve to basically maintain more of, I don't know. It's something. It's truly, me personally. I'm too natural. I'm too peaceful to even want to be a part of anything that they got going on. So I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to remind people that we're dealing with people who are afraid of actually losing their position in the world. We're dealing with people who are afraid of actually realizing, hey, the tides are shifting, and you're going to have to come up off that pedestal of yours and realize we are about to be equal. And all throughout history, there are constant moments where every time a society or group of people try to make themselves somehow more advanced than another person in some type of genetic or synthetic or magical way, they end up getting wiped out or drowned or maybe crushed by ash clouds and rocks and magma. There's so many different events throughout history where there was always some type of highly advanced civilization that basically was abusing other human beings, and then at some point nature takes its toll, and then it's like, okay, it's time for a reset. This is why we have expeditions and things like that, trying to find Atlantis and understand Atlantis, and finding ancient alien technology in the ocean. Why do you think all these things are buried, or they're basically underwater, or why all these different groups of people are either no longer with us, or they're in some deep hiding? Because that is not what God intended for human beings to be. This is why we are experiencing what we're experiencing. So now all those people who are augmenting themselves, trying to make themselves into superhumans, watch God work. All right, that's it for now. That's it for now. I'm gonna go ahead and finish my route. Take life one breath, one thought, one step, one day at a time. Peace.